Good morning, everybody. Just a note that the transmission is delayed for I think about half a minute or so, so we'll just wait for 10 o'clock and then we'll start our session. Alright, so welcome to Autodesk ACC build models to assets and QR codes. This is something we've been recently using with one of our clients, and it was interesting to me, and I also wanted to introduce it to everybody else. Having come from a manufacturing background originally, it was interesting to me on the shop floor to see how assets are tracked. And I see we've got somebody from Philippines. Welcome. If you have any questions, remember you can just put your query into the chat. The manufacturing shop floor is analogous to a building site, and there we can actually see the effect of the asset tracking. So let me, without further ado, introduce today's agenda. We're going to chat about global unique identifiers. We're going to have a look at the embedded ID from Revit itself, from the from Navisworks, as well as from IFC, which is built into Revit, and we'll discuss which one is maybe better to use. We'll also talk about codification of the Revit files, how you can do that. Then we'll look at creating the assets from the models in ACC to convert the GUIDs, the global unique identifiers, to ACC assets, and then ultimately to use QR codes in the field. And how do we go about doing that? It's relatively simple when you know how, and so I hope that you will gain some benefit from this during this short webinar. As an introduction, assets are central to the facilities management of the digital twins that we create. Digital twins are digital equivalents of the actual building, and we use them for facilities management. That facilities management ultimately would be done on a platform like, for instance, Eptura is one of the options. They've partnered with Autodesk, or otherwise Datum 360 if you're more into petrochemical. But in essence, the ability to have assets is critical because we can attach information to those assets and then plan our maintenance schedules around that. Also reactive and monitored data that we can do within the digital twin. So the identification of the assets is considered, and when we show, we can either enter data against the assets in the field or printed QR codes to identify the assets, and build generates them. All right, let's jump in. Revit generates IFC IDs automatically. They are perhaps the best choice to use as asset identifiers. You can see that Navisworks also creates unique ID, and then Revit can expose a long GUID for Revit elements that can be written to a shared parameter and used instead, and Revit IDs are too short to identify elements. Let's have a look at that. I've got a Revit model open. This is an MEP model that I've created, or copied rather, and there is something that is an air terminal. And that air terminal, when I look at the Revit properties, I can see that there's an automatic IFC GUID. This we can see in the properties on the side. That is the IFC GUID. So it's a global unique identifier, and that is the number that is used to identify that within IFC. So it's meant to be something that is unique, and the chances are that globally you wouldn't find another element within a Revit model on this planet that has that number. So it serves as a relatively good GUID. And what you can also see is that there's a shared parameter, those that know shared parameters. And this shared parameter is just something that I grabbed using Dynamo from the elements and wrote it into the element field. And then you'll see some other Kobe parameters in the instance, and then obviously that this data is applicable only to this one transducer, that's an instance. And then we've got the type properties, and in the type properties, which might become important later, we also have our classification parameters, and in this case specifically the British unit class product number and product description, saying that it is an air diffuser and that it is PR70650402. That, for those of you that know, is the British classification system, one of the tables. There are other classification systems as well, and we'll see how we can use that to the advantage. So obviously, if I wanted to grab air terminals and I've got that bit of information, then I can say grab all the elements where this parameter is equal to or contains PR70650402. The way that we do that is quite interesting. So if you look at your Autodesk account and you go to your Revit, you can go into the details for Revit. This is something that a lot of people already know about and do use. For those of you that aren't familiar with that, you can go into the details there, and then under the extensions, you'll see that there's an interoperability tools and model checker validation tool, as well as the interoperability tools. You can download those and install them. Following which, within Revit, you'll have the ability to go to your interoperability tools menu. Okay, there's a lot that's going on here, but in essence, we're interested in assigning classifications. For our purposes, this will do for now. There is a little bit more that was done in setting up the project, and we can see that the elements are named in a specific way. So for those of you that are familiar with this, this is how you can set up the families and the types for those families, but in our case, assigning classification is the purpose. For this classification, if you had set up the Kobe parameters, you can assign that. You can also have blanks only off, and in this way you can assign the parameters. So what's nice about the general parameters, you can see that we've got the unit class database. There's an omni class database that's used in North America a lot of the time. There's a uniformat and master format database, IFC, ASTM, FICM, and you can also have your own pick list. In South Africa, we've used the ASAQS standard in the past, but all of these standards might or might not be applicable to the project that you operate on, depending on where on the planet you are operating. In our case here in South Africa, we're going to use the British unit class database. And if I load this, it just loads the database so that I can code the elements that are within Revit. Specifically, I'll be looking at the products table. You can see that it identifies that I've selected an air terminal and filters it accordingly. You could take this filter out and choose anything, but it is applicable to this air terminal. So therefore, if I look at PR70, there's air and fume outlet products, air terminals and diffusers. And then beyond that, I can give a second, so in this case, it's just PR to its air diffusers. Right? But it's interesting because the 70650402 follows the 706504. So all of the air terminals and diffusers would have the first three numbers common. And so if I wanted to select, say, all the air terminals and diffusers, then I could use the PR706504, and that will then pick up all the families that are air terminals and diffusers. I'm going to sign those properties, and because I said that we want to have the Kobe parameters assigned as well, you'll see that it's in the type properties for that element now, and every element of that type will now have the PR code of 706504.2. The description is air diffusers, and then the category is a combination of the two. So if you've done that to every element that you see here, including your ducts themselves, so in this case the ducts are going to be PR65652514 for circular sheet metal ductwork and fittings, and that will also apply to the elbow. So all the ductwork and fittings of round type. You'll have another one for ductwork and fittings for rectangular type, and you know, this also extends, the argument also extends to whatever discipline you are from. So if you are architectural or structural, the coding will guide you as to how to name your products. Instance and or loadable and system families might be handled differently. And then on the mechanical equipment over here, we can see we've got another code again, PR650387. All right. So the point is that if we are going to be using the product coding to partially assign the creation of assets, that's one way to do this. The other way in which I want to do this is to look and say that we've got a system to which these elements have been applied. So just looking at that, in the system browser, we can see that we've got the mechanical systems. There's the return air and the supply air. The return air has the mechanical unit up here as the driver, same as for the supply air. And then underneath that we've got mechanical return air 1 and supply air 1. So you could have multiple systems feeding off that APU, and they are all the individual elements that are hooking up to that system. So it's feeding all the air terminals. And so the idea is, can I create assets that are not only uniquely identified, but also that can identify to systems? Now, obviously, it might be overreach to say, right, each and every element I'm going to track as an asset, but it is possible, and we'll look at that. But mostly what the guys would be interested in is big equipment, big ticket items like your mechanical equipment managed online. To achieve the result, I've got my own project that I'm running just for way of demonstration, and I am using a published model that has been through a process of review and is lying in this folder over here. There's a mechanical model, and then in the build module there is an asset page. Right, so it might take us a little while just to run through this. Already you can see that I've got some assets defined and I've got some systems defined. Categories rather, right? And the way that one can create these Just by coming all across the page and into the settings drop down. And then you can see that we've got some different things over here. The one is permissions. So I like running my projects with roles. The reason for that is because I can incorporate it into a project template. So whenever I assign, say, a project-wide asset creator or project-wide asset editor or project-wide asset manager or project-wide asset viewer, then they will inherit that role automatically. I am, of course, and my colleagues are the administrators, so we've automatically got full permissions over there. So we'll be able to do everything during this webinar that's humanly possible. But you might want to limit other people's access to those assets so that they can't fill in incorrect information or whatever you have. Then there are status sets. This is the default. I have created my own status set before. Unfortunately, you can only have one status set applied to your assets. So you can't chop and change. You have to choose one. If you need more detailed diving in, then you can create a custom field. In this case, you can see I've created a custom field with 0%, 25%, 50%, 75%, 100%. That was for the client that wanted to see the install tracking. So we found that we could at least create a filter for the item like that. There are system categories. This is also something that is interesting, and what I've created yesterday, you can see you can create your own system category. And there, for instance, you can see I've created the HVAC mechanical air. There's the return air, and there is the supply air. So those are the types of systems that I've got in there. Then with asset categories, I decided, and that would have to be discussed with whoever is running the project, how you would like to divide up your assets. I've once again went with mechanical return air versus mechanical supply air, working under the assumption that each one will be installed. And there's the mechanical return air, and if I open mechanical return air 1, you'll recognize that it corresponds to mechanical return air 1. There's the supply air. There's mechanical supply air 1. There's the return air. That's the mechanical return air 2. Alright, so the mechanical return air 2, there we can see it's that entire one that's running over there. If I isolate that, it's the one branch that's running like that. So that's mechanical return air, and that is mechanical supply air. So essentially what I'm saying is, let me go and isolate that based on the system type. Okay, and that's what the return air 1 is about. The return air 2, that would be the second return air system that I might add. And inside of that, I've created the PR codes. You might recognize circular sheet metal ductwork and fittings, rectangular sheet metal ductwork and fittings, and the air terminals and diffusers. So I wanted to show that we can isolate these assets based on their coding, and we want to take them off from the models directly. So if we look at the return air versus supply air, where those haven't been created yet, then we can in this case just copy under return air and put under supply air a subcategory. That illustrates to you how you can create something like that. There is the sheet metal and ductwork. And then we've got the air terminals and diffusers. So that's an example of creating a subcategory for the assets. All right, so we've got something that's mechanical supply A1, and then within mechanical supply A1, we've got the air terminals, the round ducting, and the rectangular ducting. So far, so good. And then we've got, okay, so we've got some of the structure here based on category, and then we've got the models. To add a model, you just basically add a model. You click on Add Model, and then you can navigate to where your models are within your project. If it is the same model that you've already loaded, we'll just update the model with the latest. Stage complete 5. Okay, it's already there. And then we can go ahead. So click on it. On the right hand side, we can either remove or go to folder. I'm just going to open the one that I've already uploaded here. And as you click on it, you'll see that you've got a Manage Asset tab there. And if we click on Manage Assets, it lists over here all the different items that it's got. I'm going to click on Manage Assets. This now brings up the categories under the HVAC, mechanical return air, which I've already done. There we can see that there are 15 circular sheet metal ductwork and fittings, 31 rectangular sheet metal ductwork and fittings, and for the air terminals and diffusers, 47. But for the supply air, to which I've just created the subcategories, at the moment there's nothing. And so we'll use these to identify the supply air items. Okay. Let's go ahead and say import assets. So I need this code over there, the PR65652514 code. I'm going to use that to identify everything that is sheet metal, circular sheet metal ductwork and fittings. If I say import assets, it opens up this dialog over here. This says, what are the import rules? So now it wants to know, how are you going to import this? They've got nice help files here as well. It explains to you a composite object is a group of individual model objects that represent a single object. Child objects refer to the individual model objects that form a composite object. So how I like to explain this, lighting families are usually like this. If you think about a chandelier, each light source is normally a light family on its own, or a lighting fixture family on its own. And so each light source within the chandelier is nested. Some people use the word nested, right? That within a container family. And then a composite object would be the chandelier, and the child objects will be the individual light bulbs. So either you refer to the chandelier or you refer to all the light bulbs within the chandelier. So in our case, in this case with HVAC, there's no real child object, so I can do import composite objects. It's not going to make a difference. Either I can use all three, they're all the same in this model's case, but you do have the option to say I want to consider only chandelier. Okay, the property that I'm going to consider, and this is now where the classification, I know what the classification parameter must be, and it is unit class PR number. There it is. Okay, so I know that with reference to the classification parameter for all my elements over there. If I look at this element over here and I have a look at the shared parameter that the collaboration tools created, then you can see that it's called classification.unitclass.pr.number. That's the name right over there. And so within the Autodesk Construction Cloud, that's the PR number. And we can say is. A logical condition, we can use is not, contain, does not contain, starts with, and is not empty. But we'll say in this case it is, and then I can even paste the value if I know what the value is. PR 65, 65, 25, 14. That's the first rule. Now comes an interesting one, because I'd also like to filter out from supply area 1, mechanical supply area 1. So I'm going to add a rule. And immediately I've got one option over here, which is and or. And again, it's quite helpful if you just hover your mouse over that. It says to you, this operator or the operator applies only to the relationship between the first and all subsequent rule sets. So if you choose and, then each rule will be this rule and this rule and this rule and this rule. You can't have this rule and that rule or this rule. So it's either and for everything, or it's or for everything. So in this case, I'm going to go granular and say and. Okay, and you'll see immediately if you add yet another rule, it doesn't have that option at the top for and or. You can also delete rules. Composite object is inheriting from the one above. And then the property itself is going to be system name. System name. The system name is mechanical supply area 1. This one is something else. That's the one that I want. And then I can say show results, and I can see if it picks up any of the assets that I'm assigning to it. So it's rule based. It's picking up the coding that I gave it through the uni format in the BIM interoperability tools, and there I can see that it's picking up the elbows and the round ducts, the round elements, and that's then exactly what I want for the circular sheet metal ductwork and fittings. There is also one for the ovals. There's an oval sheetwork, there's a rectangular sheetwork, and there's a round sheetwork, and that then picks up 256 assets. We do the same thing with rectangular ducting. We just copy that number over there. We import assets. It should go quicker now that we understand it. We're going to do import composite objects. Again, it doesn't matter in this case. We're going to do classification.unitclass PR number equals or is. I can paste that. Add rule and system name is supply A1. Show results. That now picks up all the rectangular sheet metal ductwork and fittings, each one individually. Should come through quite shortly. There it is. Save. And again, we can see there are 18 of them. And then on the air terminals and diffusers, again, we just need that coding. There's the number. Okay, it's the shortened number for all air terminals and diffusers, so I'm grouping them together. Import composite objects. That once again is going to be classification dot unitclass dot PR number is, and I paste. Not O2. I must say contains. So there are no items with that exact number, but there are ones that contain the parent node of air terminals and diffusers. As long as it contains the first 3 digits, that's fine. We're going to add a rule then for system name is mechanical supply air 1. Show the results, and that should now pick up all the air terminals that are connected into that system. Alright, so just by way of explanation or by way of illustration, I've separated the supply air and the return air, and I've shown that you can, within that, identify all the assets that have either circular sheet metal, rectangular sheet metal, or air terminals and diffusers. What I did yesterday for mechanical return air, this one is for supply air. After I've done this and identified the assets, next I can go to the properties. There's a blue button over there that I can click on and say, let's go to the properties, and now how am I going to map the parameters? So I can see over here the mechanical return air 1, I've only got the name. All right, and if I go to this and I say, all right, with regards to this, the barcode, I haven't assigned that yet, but there's the name. Right, and I'm pushing updates. What does that mean? It means that if the name of this element is changed in the Revit model, and then it will push up over here. So, and then on the barcode, I could say that that's going to be the IFC GUID. Here's the IFC GUID, and that will now take up the barcode of the IFC GUID. And I'm going to have to just run through it quickly. So that's the name, the barcode. That's the barcode, would be IFC GUID. And we'll do that for this one as well. So there's a little bit of setup to do this, a bit of manual. We'll do the barcode IFC GUID. So what that does is it accepts the value from the IFC GUID from the Revit model, which is of course automatically assigned. And if you're dealing with most other files, so IFC, Industry Foundation class, of course, that is a common interchange of files between different BIM packages, just like DXF is to DWG, so IFC is to BIM. So you should find that that's quite common, and you should be able to take pretty much any software and export that to an IFC format, which means that it should also generate for you your IFC GUID. I'm going to map the names IFC GUID. Just 2 more to go and then that's done. There it is. Forgot to map that one. And then this is the last one over here. We're going to do the name. Push that one, rather push the updates, and that's going to be IFC GUID and save. Alright, so there we can see we've got the and then review changes. Right, so that's now loading the information for those assets, and those are the model-based assets that's getting loaded. Right, and apply changes. You can see we've created, we've updated, and we've detached. Apply changes. That's it, guys. That's it. Alright, so that's with regards to importing the assets. If you want to do it directly from a model, then load the model, add the model, and then open the model if you want to update it, and just run through the process, manage the assets. If you're happy with what you've got, next to map properties, and then it will update, review changes, and it'll update based on what you've done before. Right, so I suspect as your model is updated with versioning within the docs platform, so your assets will be updated online. Then that's with regards to creating the assets. We've looked at asset categories. We did allude to system categories. And if we click back on assets, we can see that we've got assets and we've got systems. So it might be quite tricky if you wanted to track the progress of every single small asset like that. And I think that's one of the reasons why they've got the systems as well. I just thought I'd show you the systems quickly. Under HVAC systems, I have created mechanical return error as well as mechanical supply error. Currently for mechanical return error, there's no system for it. Okay, so if I add mechanical supply error, again, that management you can do within the settings if you want to set up your own tree structure over there. But once you've set up your tree structure, then you can create a system within that category. With regards to the name, let's use mechanical supply error 1. So I create that system. It's called mechanical supply error 1. The system category is mechanical supply error. And then the status as specified to start with and create. That creates this system. You can either add a system as a subsystem or you can add assets. In this case, I'm going to add assets where, and now I can identify, or rather filter by asset category, and now you'll see the logic behind how I structured the asset categories themselves, because I can just simply say choose everything that is in mechanical supply error 1. So that will include the air terminals, the rectangular and the circular elements that appear within mechanical supply error 1. You can add all those 50 assets. And so within that system, I've now got these 50 assets that can be identified for that system. You go back to asset systems, and the asset system then can be individually identified, opened, system status, system description, category. You can add references, for instance, anything like that, RFIs, whatever you want. And then you can also see that you've got the assets and you've got them listed over here with the barcode IDs. If you click on one of them, it opens up that item like that. There's the details, the references, the activity log for that asset within that system. So you can browse the assets per system if you want. So that's during the creation of the assets. We can use the coding. That's essentially what it comes down to. We have to be careful how we set up our categorization and subcategorization. Having a bit of a heads-up approach with regards to the systems. If we do want to identify elements within systems, it kind of makes sense to me to align them with each other, on the HVAC side at least. And then, of course, we can go and have a look at those assets themselves. So once we've got assets, there is an asset. Right? If I click on the asset, it looks like this. And interestingly enough, it's got a model listed over there. This is what am I looking at over here? There. That's the correct model for the MEP stuff. Interestingly, under the details, if you're on the asset tab, you've got this barcoding. And this barcode actually shows you a unique identifier. So that represents the barcode for the IFC GUID. And you can physically print this barcode using a barcode printer. You can do one at a time. You can see, or you can actually export a PDF for QR and barcodes, and then it will save that file. If you save it to a file, that will then save a PDF file. And you just have to choose which items you want. Oh, come on. Let's try and see if we can do this again. There it is. Export to PDF QR codes. Let's run the report. And that should then be QR codes to PDF, which you can then print on a barcode printer. So the big idea there so we've been through creating assets. The big idea is that you can actually do the management. You can do the management of, I see you say it's inaudible. I'm hoping that the audio is coming through, apologies. So the QR codes in the field, you can actually manage that using your cell phone. There's an ACC mobile app, and the ACC mobile app looks something like this. This is the ACC mobile app. This is the first page that you'll see once you open on the left-hand side. And that's your welcome page for your project. That's the project name at the top. There's a more button at the bottom over there. And then you can go to the assets. And when you open the assets, it lists all the assets, and you can then scan. There's a little button, actual button that you can scan with. If you click on scan, then you can just hold your telephone up to the barcode, and it will automatically identify that barcode. It will identify the asset for you on site with the barcode. And then you've got the access to your status. You can see on this, on the second last image over there, you can then choose to update the status of that asset to say from being specified to being ordered to being delivered to being installed. And then you've also got the ability to add references, and those references could include things like files, forms, if you want to do QA and QC for installations, quality assurance and quality control. You can create issues. If there are issues with the installations, you can take photos. You can even do videos and attach them as well. So you can literally stand on site, be in front of some other component, scan the QR code, open it up on your telephone, and while you're inspecting, you can say, I'm going to switch on and I'm going to record a video. And during the video, you can say, this has been installed, but there seems to be a problem with this and that and the other, and save that video, create an issue, assign it to somebody specific to go and fix that, and then it comes back, and you've also got RFIs and sheets. So it's a very powerful tool to inspect the assets. And that's very exciting to me because that's exactly what you find on site as well. And let me download this report. That would correspond to a sort of a workshop environment. And here we can see the different barcodes ready for printing on a printer, or maybe we give it to a printing shop to print for us, and then we can just go and paste those barcodes onto specific elements on site for identification using our telephone. So this is the QR codes. which is very useful in the field to create the link up between the IFC. I would recommend IFC GeoID versus the Revit or Navisworks IDs. I have looked forward into something called Tandem, which also has its own GeoID. That's the entire BIM field is full of GeoIDs, but you can map the identifiers across quite easily, so that shouldn't be a problem. There is something else that you can do here as well. So those are the assets, of course. If you open the model, it opens up the model in the model viewer. We'll just wait for the model to resolve quickly. It shows us the element. And whichever one we select, it would zoom in there, or if we click on an item over here, it identifies it over here. You can see the information on the right. And we've also got the filters. So if we say we'd like to see everything of category, this is a bit tricky, but you just hover over it. There's it's one of my on my wish list to be able to make this wider. But in any case, these are circular sheet metal. Okay. And then that's fine. Done. Then it identifies those elements based on that filter. Let's just clear that filter. Okay, and there's our assets. We can also unisolate the assets, and let's go and have a look and see if we say this item over there. You have to do them one by one. Let's change that to ordered and to ordered. Then you'll see that we can actually filter out by, say, status ordered. And then we can see them isolated based on their status. It's quite nice also. So if you have different statuses for different elements, if you track them like that, then you can also view them sort of isolated with the other stuff grayed out, and view them quite easily based on what status they are at. So that's basically the technical goodies for this course, but the conclusion is that you can use the IFC GeoID code to identify assets. It might be the best one that's available. It's built into Revit, and if you are using IFC exports from other models, it's going to assign IFC GeoIDs as well. So it should be a common identifier. You can use the codification of elements to allow the rule-based selection or the automatic selection of assets from models. And then the logical step from there, print QR codes and use your mobile phone and the mobile app. Then just to go on site, if you want to enter information of that element, then you can use a cell phone. And to give it an example, you should be able to use a form. And this is maybe where it's going to be most useful. I'm just switching back over here to the build module. is that you can actually go and create a form that you might design and create to gather information. So you might say, this element was installed by this person on that date. The warranty is so much, or such length of time. Whatever information you'd like to attach, you could attach, or you can gather using a form. So you can create your own form, you can create your own form template. And if you create a template, then you can gather info, and you can then add, what's the template and so on, template type, punch list, other field is gather info from assets, or just asset info. Description, for form filled field filled form to gather info. So just something in the field to gather information, and let's save that for now. Single let's just go with me. And then one can carry on, modify that template, go to placeholder title, and then start adding questions. Like, for instance, placeholder question: who installed the asset? And then we can say, is it required or not? If it is a required, this we would take away. This would be placeholder question, pre-configured response. It's just a text response. Or we can have it as a drop down. We can answer, we can put specific values in. So there's different ones that we can do. And that would be a required question: who installed the asset? And we can add another question saying, what is the warranty? And whatever information that we want to gather, we can do it as such. And then, of course, let's just do that. Save. And then while we are on the site, even in our phone, once we've scanned that asset, then we could even do one of those forms. The other things that we could do is to gather PDFs, digitized information with regards, the maintenance manuals, the parts manuals, whatever information we'd like to digitize about that asset, digitize it into PDF, and then maybe create a submittal. Not a submittal, what do you call it? A submittal. And then that submittal could be a sort of a container to digitize all the information that we have around that specific asset. And then that's it basically. It's a short introduction to assets. I hope you've enjoyed the webinar and maybe seen or learned something new. If there are any questions, please just let me know. There's some further links for you to consider. The Autodesk Construction Cloud. There, we also have the Autodesk University. Autodesk University is a brilliant resource for anybody that wants to navigate the world of Autodesk. It's a get together in Las Vegas every year. It's online, it's free, unless you go there in person. That's Andrew Anagnost, but CEO of Autodesk. And over here, for instance, you will find a lot of the latest things that people are doing around the world with Autodesk software. Basically free university classes if you want, or just a university type lecture to introduce you to some of the further things. Then we've also got Micrographics YouTube channel for those of you that are interested. Some webinars and basically our company YouTube channel. And then our webinar series, of which this is one, if you want to catch up with some other webinars. And then lastly, we've also got some blogs over there. But in any case, if you want to get hold of us afterwards, you're always welcome to contact us. Our contact details are as follows. The easiest way to get hold of us: our website, www.mgfx.co.za, and you can email info@mgfx.co.za. With that, I see there's no questions, so thank you very much for your time. Thank you for attending. It's been a pleasure having you. I hope that you get the opportunity to use the Autodesk Construction Cloud to your advantage, and hopefully I'll see you again. Have a nice day further. Bye now.